soon became very clear to me that 80% of those Indian restaurants were run by Bangladeshis. I can remember my brother was working for the United Nations when the liberation of Bangladesh. I can remember him working in a refugee camp at Gobadanga in Bengal. And then at that time, I was working for British Transport Hotels at Waterloo Station. And at the first influx of Bangladeshis, I can remember very, very well, because I'd have a lovely staff canteen, and everyone would bring their own food in their little copper pots. So I now find myself, I started the business 30 years ago, and as I said, we're now quite a large business, and our customers are the Bangladeshi restaurants who sell our beer. So it was only natural for us to acquire Bangla beer. So thank you very much indeed for giving me the chance to sponsor the magazine and to support the flights to take the chefs to back home. And I think what is also interesting for me is that as the cuisine has now changed and developed over the 30 years, it's quite an honour to have, for you to be asked to be exhibiting in your native hometown. So that's it. But I think the main thing I'd say is it's the entrepreneurship that has driven that 80% ownership. It is phenomenal, and I'd like to thank you for being customers, and thank Curry Life especially for all the work that they've done in organising today. Thank you.
Thank you. From Curry Life, Keith West, to say something, because he's been campaigning with us about the work permit issues. As you know, IAS, Immigration Advisory Service, has been campaigning really hard with all the caterers, including BCA, Bangladesh Caterers Associations, to lobby the government to change the rules and relax the rules so that our workers from developing countries can come and help our industry. Keep best.
Well, thank you very much indeed for inviting me. It's a particular pleasure to be here in the Red Fort because the general manager, who's standing over there, is married to one of our star managers in our London office of IAS. So I feel a great affinity already as I just walked through the door. The second thing I want to say is this. Over the centuries, many people have come from overseas to the UK, and they've all made their mark. They've all left something or brought something with them in way of culture, language, or whatever. Where would we be without tea, without bungalows, without a toddy to console us? All these were imports from other languages. And of course the British way is to actually adopt other people's cultures and languages and things like this and to make them its own. And so this is the most wonderful thing, and why we are still the envy of the rest of the world in this respect, namely that we actually have managed to create, as a result of that, this multicultural, multi-religious, multi-faith, multi-ethnic society, which actually demonstrates how, apart from the odd piece of tension every so often, we can do that in peace. Of course, when those went out with the East India Company some 200-300 years ago, they went with guns and bullets. I don't suppose at that time they thought that the retaliation was going to be coming back with curry. But actually the curry is much more sustainable when you think about it, because of all those nationalities, the one I believe that has permeated the British way of life more are being exported back to Bengal. This British creation of the chicken tikka masala and many other lovely dishes which we're about to enjoy in a moment. But you know, that is very typical of the continuing cultural exchange that we in this country have benefited from through the legacy of Empire and Commonwealth, and long may that cultural exchange continue. But I say this, that if you have that cultural exchange, it demands reciprocity. It means that no longer can we expect to have from British officials in the visa department in Dhaka this universal suspicion that people coming from Bangladesh are somehow trying to get in through the back door. Because the great majority of people who come from Bangladesh abide by the immigration rules and provide no problem whatsoever. And it is a few who abuse the system that have now engendered this culture of disbelief in the Foreign Office and the Home Office, which frankly needs to change if we are going to have that degree of reciprocity. That is why you were kind enough to mention the campaigning that I have done to try to get a proper successor scheme to the sectors-based one, which at the moment has ended and we have nothing in its place. I think it was particularly insensitive of Charles Clarke, the former Home Secretary, to say that he expected all low-skilled workers to come in from the European Union in the future. I think it was insensitive because it demonstrated a misunderstanding of the way the Bengali catering industry works in this country. Behind every single restaurant, and if British government does not understand that, then it needs to learn it very fast indeed. Because I shall not rest until we actually have a proper successor scheme which enables those who contribute so much to the British economy in taxes, but also actually now are an integral part of the British way of life in providing good quality, good value cuisine. And it's all well and good saying, let's have people come into the kitchen who are going to demand much higher wages. So long as people are paid the minimum wage, then that really ought to be sufficient as far as government is concerned. Because I'm thinking of the people who are the poorer people in this country, who can't afford to go out to the expensive restaurants and dine there, who actually the only chance they've got of going out and having an evening with their family is to go to a Bengali restaurant and actually enjoy good quality, good value food. And that's the way we should be looking at it. I have written to the Minister again. I have asked for a meeting with him. I'm told by his private secretary that I'm going to expect a letter within 3 weeks in response to my particular proposals for a new scheme. But I give you this pledge. I shall not rest until we actually get something done for the industry which is so important to this country.
Like Keith West, we have had support for our campaign from European Member of Parliament, Robert Evans. And I'm pleased to welcome Robert here today at the festival launch.
Well, thank you very much indeed. And like other colleagues, I'm delighted to be here. I was particularly impressed when my diary secretary had written in my diary an appointment for Curry is Life, which I thought was interesting twist on it. I think it's very appropriate, and you see here a whole cross-section of life, and I think that's important because curry is life, it's part of British life, as Keith has said. And you could ask, well, what's Bangladesh, what's the Bengali restaurant industry got to do with the European Parliament? Well, apart from the fact that as a member of the European Parliament, if somebody who runs a restaurant asks me to be involved or come along, I think it would be silly to turn it down, wouldn't it? If anybody who owns a restaurant or anybody who's got tickets for football matches or cinema or anything like that, of course you accept it, you come along. But quite seriously, I know how important it is to London culture and indeed to Britain. And that the rules and regulations that Keith was talking about apply as much in any other country of the European Union as they do here. Murad has spoken of how the curry restaurants, which I don't say used to be exclusively to Britain, were very much based in Britain and had its a premier position here, are far and wide. And I was in one in Brussels not long ago, and I was ordering